Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement. I know I said I might not have mail calls out every Wednesday, but I'm gonna have one this Wednesday. So this is midweek mini mail call number 40. Wow, amazing. And I have quite a lot of stuff that I've already opened that I need to get to on these mail calls. And I also have quite a number of packages that people have sent me that I haven't even opened yet. The generosity of my viewers is just incredible. So anyhow, this is going to be a relatively short episode. I'm trying to keep these shorter so I can actually make them quickly and get them out to the viewers. But anyhow, without further ado, let's get right to it. All right, we have a package here. It looks like it comes from Lawrence in England. So hi to all my viewers in England. There we go. This package was really well taped up, so I didn't want to accidentally cut into the contents. All right. Oh, interesting. All right, let's see what we got here. Lawrence writes, I've been following your channel for at least 2 years, and I really enjoy your work, especially with those just throw them in the bin miraculous resurrections you seem to pull off on a regular basis. It's been a little bit of time since I've done a repair-a-thon or any kind of repairs. I have quite a little stack of things that need to be repaired, so I'm gonna have to get back to repair videos soon enough. And then the 8-bit dance party jig you do at every opportunity. I sure do. And I know people seem to really laugh at that. And anyways, I love making people laugh, so that's why I do it. First, about me. I'm an electrical engineer since 1983, and I'm still working. Well, that kind of sucks. You've been working a very long time. I got my first computer, a BBC Model B, in 1982, which I still have. That's awesome. I have 2 BBC Model Bs, have not gotten enough screen time on the channel. I did make a video where I showed how I bought them in the UK off eBay and went on a business trip there, and then I brought them back with me in my luggage. He goes on to say, apart from my BBC Micro, I have never bought a pre-built PC, always building my own from whatever components I fancied. Anyhow, onto the contents of this small parcel. I received these from a friend many, many years ago who had long since gotten rid of his VIC-20 as he thought I could use the RAM. Oh, right. Original 16K RAM cartridges and in the original box. As you can see, I've never used these and the boxes have never even been opened. So now I pass these on to you and I'm sure you'll be able to make good use of them. Best wishes for the holiday season. I hope you and your loved ones stay safe. Thank you very much, Lawrence. I think I got this package, on the 5th of January. So it's almost the end of February. So I've had these for quite a while, and he would have obviously sent this before the new year. Wow, this is pretty cool. Unopened 16K RAM expansions for the VIC-20. Lawrence, thank you very much for sending these in. Let's see if these still work when we take a closer look at them on the bench. All right, 2 new in box VIC-20 RAM cartridges. And look, the rainbow logo on this later VIC-20 matches the cartridge or the box art perfectly for these RAM carts. I wanted to show the picture of Rammy that Lawrence sent up close. That is just hilarious. Rammy completely approves of the really adorable artwork. Anyhow, I have this German VIC-20 out so we can test these 16K RAM carts. This is a VIC-20 that Stuart sent in on one of the mail call episodes a while back. I think it was around Christmas time. So inside the box, there's the cartridge. Does it have a piece of paper? It does. It has a little piece of paper. The VIC-1111 16K RAM pack. It plugs into the back of the VIC computer or the VIC-1010 expansion module. Push firmly into the expansion slot, ensure the label is facing up. Turn on the power. You should now see Commodore Basic V2 19,965 bytes free. Any unauthorized modification of this RAM pack voids the warranty. And it even gives you a little bit of the memory map that this 16K RAM cart gives you here. So Basic now starts at 1200 hex, and the screen is moved to 1000, and the color is at 9400. So that's one thing about the VIC-20 is when you use a RAM cart, it does move things around. So sometimes programs actually don't work when this is installed because they may have been hard-coded for some of these other areas of RAM that have now moved around. I know I've mentioned on the channel before that I had a VIC-20 when I was a kid, and I had one of these modules. My father got me one after I begged him because I used to type in a lot of basic programs, and I really remember running out of RAM with the stock memory on the VIC-20. All right, I'm putting this in the computer, and it's really hard. Okay, let me try again. This is always how it goes. There we go. It's really hard to get cartridges in and out of the VIC-20. And if I turn on the VIC-20, should come up eventually. There it is, 19,967 bytes free, which is actually not exactly what this paper says. Oh, you can ignore that it's shifted down. This is this monitor. Let's see if I turn it off and on. Will it look a little better? It has to do with the fact that this is a PAL VIC-20, and I have this monitor connected to the RetroTink, and it really isn't always happy. At least the RetroTink isn't, but yeah, Power Cycle usually fixes it, although we still have this border here. Anyhow, it says that we should have 19,965 bytes free, and we have 2 extra bytes. What exactly could explain that? Is that a typo in this, on this paper here? Does anyone know? But let's just check out the screen memory location. It says it starts at 4096 decimal. So I'm going to poke that in. 4096, I'm going to poke in, I don't know, 100. So that changed the asterisk there to an underscore. If I power off the machine and I pull this RAM cart out, very difficultly pull it out. Oh man. Okay. Incidentally, I do remember on my RAM cart that this metal label did fall off eventually, and it looks like this one is starting to fall off, like the glue they used on here wasn't very good. Okay, so the computer came up 3583 bytes free. So let's try poking to 4096 again, and that should not result in that underscore. Look, I poked it and that asterisk did not change. The screen memory is somewhere else. So if you relied on writing directly to screen memory on the VIC-20, say with a little assembly language program, it will stop working if you put a RAM cart in. Unless you detect the extra RAM and the different memory map, which I assume there's a way to do that, and then all of your screen writing routines have an offset that you can apply to move it into the correct memory space. Anyhow, that's really awesome that this cartridge works. This would have been pretty expensive. I know I had an episode on the channel where I talk about VIC-20 stuff, and I show the VIC-20 80 column expansion plus the homemade RAM expansion card. And in the price list for the VIC-20, these 16K RAM carts, which entirely are filled with static RAM, were very, very expensive. And I kind of recall you could buy an 8K one, and then you could modify that one to give you 20K of RAM, and you could save yourself a bunch of money. Let's try the other one in the computer here, see if this one is working. Box is in great condition, just like on the other one. There it is, 16K RAM cart. Looks like it's got the plastic on the metal label. You can probably peel that up. It's starting to peel up a little in the corner here. But the gold fingers there, they look completely unscathed. And the same little instruction pack. Let's plug this one in. Maybe this one will have the correct number of bytes. Just kidding. I mean, it's impossible. It's going to have the same number of bytes. And we'll turn on the power. There it is. Also has 2 additional bytes. It says we should have had 65 bytes, and we have 67. Cool. Let's just do the poke, 4096, comma 100. And there's that underscore. So that is pretty neat to have 2, sorry, it's just hard to get that out, 2 original RAM cartridges. Thank you very much, Lawrence, for sending these in to Mail Call. Okay, so we have a really big package here. This comes from Archer in Greeley, Colorado. Let me crack this open. Let's see. I remember chatting with Archer about what this is, so we have a note here. We have a cable that looks like an Atari cable. And let's see here. The stuff that was in the box was incredibly well packed. I unwrapped this already. You might be able to tell what this is, but let me read the note from Archer. He goes, enclosed is an Atari 400 we discussed via email, and a bonus 810 disk drive. Hopefully someday I'll move back to Portland and be able to see these machines back up and running in person. But at least we can enjoy more wonderful content on your YouTube channel. Thanks, Archer. Thanks very much, Archer. Yes, that's right. I've had very, very little Atari content on my channel. So I thought it might be fun to try to fix the Atari 400, or at the worst, I could try to use parts from this to get the 800 working, since it's a little bit of a better machine. Now, I've actually never seen a 400. Well, I've seen a 400 in person, but I've never really held one. I'm a bit surprised how much smaller the 400 is than the 800. It's just, seems like it's just a lot thinner, not as tall. So yeah, very cool. This thing's in actually really, really, really nice shape. It's just a little bit dirty, could use a tiny bit of a clean. So there we go, an Atari 400, the disk drive, the cable, and an old joystick. Thanks very much, Archer. Let's take a look at this stuff on the bench. All right, lots of Atari goodies. Look at that, an Atari 400. Its accompanying disk drive, the Atari 810, and a very kind of worn out joystick. I was gonna say disk drive, joystick. This is one of the original ones. I can tell by the way the button pushes. I think it is. I think Atari experts out there will be able to tell me. Unfortunately, it is missing the top plastic cover thingamajiggy. But that's okay, I'm not a big fan of these types of joysticks anyway. I like to use my D-pads, and now I have, of course, my NES modded controllers, which I've shown on other mail calls. I use those, and those work perfectly with an Atari as well. There's no need to use this specifically unless you have nostalgia for it. My only nostalgia for that controller is cramped hands. So this is the Atari 810 disk drive. You can tell it's just a normal full height 5¼ inch disk drive in there. And there's actually a disc in there. What is this? An Atari disc, but that disc is in rough shape. I don't think that disc is gonna work at all. Not that it's been creased and folded like that. But yeah, just a standard full height mechanism, probably made by Alps, or it could be Sugart, who knows, or one of the other companies that was making those. We got a power switch on the front here. There's a power LED and looks like an access LED. And on the back, it has some type of DC power input, and then it has two serial I/O connections. I think it's SIO it's called. Archer did send along one of the official cables, which is pretty cool. Although I do have to say, it is possible to 3D print these, and I have done that. I made an adapter from USB to serial I/O to use like my phone with the Atari to load software and stuff. So I had to 3D print one of these connectors, and for the pins inside, I took pins from an old AT power supply connector. It's the same pins in there. So the 3D printed connector works perfectly. It connects right into the computer, but it's nice to have an authentic cable. These disk drives use a serial bus that's very much like the IEC bus on the Commodores. I think this is a lot faster though. Maybe it runs at 19.2 kilobits per second. So what does that give you, about 2K a second? Still not super fast, not as fast as like an Apple II disk interface, but it's decently fast. It looks like you have up to 4 drive settings here, so 4 kind of IDs. But yeah, DC power input. I don't know what voltage that is. I'm gonna have to look that up. And I don't have the original power supply for the disk drive, but I'm sure there is tons of information online about that, so I'm not really too worried about it. It looked like a standard connector, which is nice. So the Atari 400, I'm just gonna get a little bit of Windex on a cloth here, give it a little bit of a clean. It's kind of a cool machine. It was very low cost at the time. It was really designed for game playing, hence this keyboard being pretty terrible. I don't think it was really designed for true keyboard text entry, you know, maybe enough to type your name for a game or something like that. But this computer had 4 joystick ports on the front, which is pretty neat. You push this button here, and that pops open the cartridge slot, so you could put your game cartridge directly into the computer for very quick booting. And of course, you did have the possibility of using something like this disk drive to load disk-based games as well. Although, I'm not totally sure how much RAM the 400 has. The Atari 800, which at the time was the big brother of this, was physically larger, had a proper full travel keyboard, and 2 cartridge slots, and I think in the back, behind the cartridges, had space for RAM expansions and things like that, so you could go up to 64K. Without looking at Wikipedia, I'm not sure how much RAM this thing has, but architecturally it's very, very similar to the 800, meaning that a cartridge game that worked on the 800 would definitely work on the 400. I gotta say that cosmetically, this computer's in pretty good shape actually. Looking at the side of the machine, it's got a DC input jack, power on off switch, and there's the SIO connection for the disk drive cable here, which On the back of the machine, this is one of the other areas that's less good on the 400. So this here is an RF cable for, looks like channel 2 or 3. Someone has written that on here for the RF channel. There is no video output on this. Now the 800 on the other hand actually has a DIN output jack, which can output, I think, chroma luma. So you get really good picture quality if you're using it with, say, a 1702 monitor or something like that. Now certain Ataris don't have chroma luma on the DIN jack. They only have like composite, but you can do a very simple mod inside to add that. I can't remember if that's the 800XL that needed that or which ones needed it, but I know my 800XL, which is a later cost-reduced version of the 800 that has 64K built in, it definitely supports chroma luma, at least now that I've modded it, I think, if I'm getting my Atari knowledge correct. And on this side of the machine, there is nothing. One thing to add about the serial I/O port on the side, it's not just for the disk drive. The cassette drive also used that port, and printer interfaces, modems, they all use that same port. Being serial I/O, just like the IEC port on the 64, you could daisy chain a bunch of devices together. So like this disk drive, you could then plug a cassette drive into this. So it was kind of neat. You could hang all these peripherals off your Ataris. And I'm pretty sure that the Atari 400 and 800 came out in 1979. I am completely going from my recollection. It might have been 80 actually. It was about 2 or 3 years before the Commodore 64. So the fact that the graphics are quite capable on this machine is pretty amazing. In fact, when you look at the Atari 400 and 800 compared to, say, an Apple II, the color graphics and sound that the Atari can do really does blow away the Apple. When the 400 was newly on the market, I think the VIC-20 was the first real competitor for this machine in that similar price category. And while the VIC-20 has a full travel keyboard, which was definitely a feature that Commodore pushed really hard, the Atari 400's graphics capability just blow away what's in the VIC-20. In fact, this is much more comparable, so to speak, to the Commodore 64 when it comes to the graphics at least. In the US at least, I think there was a pretty big rivalry between the Atari fans and the Commodore fans, one claiming they had better graphics sound than the other, etc., etc. Because I was an Apple II person, well, VIC-20 and then Apple II, and I was quite young at the time, I don't really remember any of those flame wars. And when I think back to that time, I was aware of the Atari 400 and 800 because you saw ads on TV, and I think I knew one person who had it. But I never really played on it much. Everyone I knew had either Commodore 64s, TI-99s, because those were so cheap, or Apple machines. Anyhow, one of the main reasons Archer sent me the Atari 400 is because he said it doesn't work, and it's actually more like a parts machine. And right here is my Atari 800, the big brother of the 400. Architecturally, as far as I'm aware, they're very similar internally, like all the custom chips that are in the machines are interchangeable between the two. And this machine has a fault, which I have not done any troubleshooting on, mind you, where the keyboard entirely doesn't work. It doesn't register any key presses. Now, it could be as simple as the keyboard just being disconnected. Like I said, I haven't even opened this thing. But in case the keyboard controller, which I assume it's got some kind of controller IC, is faulty on this machine, I thought maybe it's the same one that's in the 400. And if this machine is faulty and has a bad, say, processor or graphics chip, that I could take parts out of this to make the Atari 800 work. Because I really do love the way the Atari 800 looks. It's chunky. I love the color scheme with the buttons here. It's just, everything about it is awesome. I don't think I've ever shown this machine on the channel before, and it's a little dusty because I actually keep it on display down in the basement here, in the part of the basement where I watch TV. I have a little room built up with a surround sound system, TV and everything. And this just sits on the bench there looking pretty because what a cool machine. It's just, look at the function keys. Look at this. It's so cool. And the condition overall of this machine is just a little dirty, especially like in the vents here. It's immaculate. So like the 400 that has that flip up lid, this also has that. If I do this, look, it flips up and there's a cartridge slot. So this has this basic cartridge in here, which I guess is not built into the 400. And I guess if you needed to run basic on the 400, you would need to have this cartridge in there as well. And there was nothing installed in there. And I guess I could install this in there, but it says left cartridge, and it says left cartridge and then right cartridge. So I think you could leave this basic cartridge in there, and then you could also put game cartridges in as well. And look at this metal construction. This thing is so thick and chunky here. And that's part of what made this machine very expensive. It was so RF shielded in this cast aluminum top and bottom piece. It was wild. And Atari did that because apparently they were trying to sell these in Sears Roebuck stores in the US here. And I think Sears said they wouldn't sell anything that wouldn't pass FCC testing for interference or something like that. I don't know, there's a backstory to it. So compared to the Commodore 64, which has these flimsy paper ones, this thing has this incredibly thick and expensive aluminum shielding. Now underneath this cover here are the expansion card slots that I talked about. I don't think they were for general peripherals. I think it's really just for the RAM expansion and stuff like that. And I honestly can't remember what's even in this thing. Like it does turn on, well, when I tried it, it powered on. I had a picture and everything. I just couldn't type anything. And you can physically see how much bigger the 800 is compared to the 400. It was really low cost machine for gaming, full on computer for doing your heavy duty computing work. It did still retain the 4 joystick ports on the front though, and on the side here, there's the DIN video output, there's the serial I/O. I guess you have, I don't know, is that a reset switch or something? We have power switch, DC input. Does still have the fixed RF cable though, that's kind of lame. And interesting on the bottom of the 800, there's some stickers here, accepted 8/17/85, 800 computer. I don't really know what this is all about because this computer is older than 1985. And on the label here, you see it says Atari and there's a Warner Brothers logo because Warner Brothers or Warner Communications, I think, owned Atari, at least at the time that this machine was made. So they have their logo on there. And if we look at the bottom of the 400, very similar. There's the Warner logo there. I don't know if these codes mean anything, but this machine is quite light compared to the 800, which really feels like a tank of a computer. Anyhow, for this video, I'm not going to try to turn on either of these devices. I will wait until a general Atari 400/800 repair video, which will be coming up in the future. Now that I've let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, that I have an 800, and like I mentioned, I have an 800 XL, which I found, I forgot where I found that, maybe at a thrift store years ago. So I would like to get the 800 working. Anyhow, I would like to work on these together with that machine and try to see what the condition of this is and to see if I can fix the 800 and if I need to take parts from this to fix it or, you know, whatever, something like that. But I do like cosmetically how nice this Atari 400 looks. I mean, I barely wiped it and it already looks pretty much brand new. I just need to get a couple little scuffs off here and it will look brand new. So no matter what happens with the internals, I'm definitely keeping this thing just because it's showroom quality. And I think it does look kind of cool. It's sort of like a little spaceship with this door. Oh, it says left cartridge right here. So that basic cartridge definitely would work in here because that's where it went, in the left cartridge slot. So, all right, good to know. So basic is not built in with this, I am assuming, and you need the basic cartridge, and then you can endure with this terrible membrane keyboard if you so desire. At least the keys have little indentations so you can feel the edges. So you kind of know that you're in the middle at least, but wow, that is bad. That is so bad. The ZX Spectrum has a million times better keyboard than this. Maybe not so much the Timex Synclor or the ZX81. That's a pretty horrible keyboard. And that doesn't even have the raised edges that this has. But the layout on here is full QWERTY. I cannot imagine. It will be fun if I can get this computer working to then see what it's like to try to type on this. Maybe I'll give myself an assignment to type out a full-page letter on this thing or something like that. I don't know. Anyhow, if you have any suggestions on awesome Atari pieces of software that I should be trying, things like that, please let me know in the comment section below. And thank you again, Archer, for sending in these Atari goodies. And that is it for this mail call episode. A little bit of VIC-20 stuff and a little Atari 400 stuff. We're talking like competitors in the early 80s of each other. Amazing stuff. So if you liked this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. But if you didn't, you know all to do, all that YouTube-y stuff. And that's it. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.